Now we'll be starting with a quick revision of PGBP, Profits and Gains of Business and Profession. It's a very, very important head of income from examination point of view. And the provisions, they are contained in sections 28, section 28 to section 44 DB. The provisions relating to computation of PGBP, they are contained in sections 28 to section 44 DB. So basically, business has been defined in section 2, clause 13, that business includes, in an inclusive manner, it has been defined. It includes trade, commerce, manufacture. Business includes trade, commerce, manufacture, or say any adventure or a concern in nature of trade, commerce, or manufacture. Trade is basically dealing in goods. Trade which is repeated on large scale is commerce, and manufacturing is what? Something, if your original commodity loses existence and new commodity comes into existence, having separate name, character, and use, it is said to be a manufactured commodity. And a new venture, normally not in the same line of business, it's a new venture. It will be adventure or a concern in nature of trade, commerce, or manufacture. And the profits resulting therefrom will be chargeable to tax under the head Profits and Gains of Business and Profession. And profession, it includes vocation. Profession includes vocation. Vocation basically is art. Professionals, we, as you know, chartered accountants, company secretary, interior decorator, film artist, all they are professionals. They are bound by a code of conduct. The members of the profession, they are bound by the code of conduct, and there is a governing body, that is the institute is a governing body. And vocation is art, that is singing, dancing, etc. So whatever profits and gains are derived from business or profession, the same is chargeable to tax under this particular head. And the essential elements of business, basically, it is normally when we carry on the business is carried on activities they are regularly carried on in normal circumstances, and the activities are carried on with the application of labor and skill, and the intention is to earn profit. The intention to carry, say for carrying on the business generally is to earn profit. So now we come to what? Section 28. Section 28 is a charging section. Section 28 is a charging section. We state that which type of incomes will be chargeable to tax under the head Profits and Gains of Business and Profession. So the incomes which are taxable under the head Profits and Gains of Business and Profession, number one is what? Profits and gains of business or profession which is carried on by the SSE at any time during the previous year. That will be taxable under this head. That is, there must be profits and gains. Profits and gains must arise from business and profession, and the business and profession must be carried on by the SSE at any time during the previous year. The income therefrom will be what? Chargeable to tax under this head. That is 28 clause 1. Then we are having compensations. In case if a person is managing, if he is managing the whole or substantially the whole of the affairs of an Indian company, or say any other company in India, there is termination of management or modification of terms and conditions relating thereto. In case there is what? Termination of management or there is modification of terms and conditions relating thereto, then in that particular circumstance, the compensation so received by that person who is managing the whole or substantially the whole of the affairs of an Indian company or any other company in India, the compensation so received will be what? Chargeable to tax under this head. It will be taxable under this head. Beside this, if a person is having agencies, various agencies are there, and there is termination of the agency or modification of terms and conditions relating thereto, then the compensation received by that person, it will also be chargeable to tax under the head Profits and Gains of Business and Profession. And beside this, if governments requisition the business, okay, it is not acquisition, but it is a requisition of business, and for the time being they are taking over the business, then the compensation which is received by the person for vesting the government or any corporation which has been owned or controlled by the government of the business, the compensation so received by that person will be chargeable to tax under the head Profits and Gains of Business and Profession. Then any person is receiving any compensation at or in connection with termination or modification of terms and conditions of any contract relating to business, there's a termination or modification of any terms and conditions of any contract relating to business in that particular circumstance, that will also be chargeable to tax under the head profits and gains of business and profession. Now we have seen the concept of mutuality is there, that income which has been derived by, say, surplus which is derived by trade, professional, similar association, that surplus is not chargeable to tax if it is on account of general services, on account of the principle of mutuality. But the exception has been carved out here under clause 28.3a, that in 28.3, in case if any income is derived by trade, professional or similar association from specific services rendered to its members. If any income has been derived by a trade association, professional association or a similar association from specific services performed for its members, the same will be chargeable to tax under the head profits and gains of business and profession. Then we are having certain export incentives, that is profit on sale of advanced licenses, profit on sale of licenses, or say we are having duty drawback. We are having the schemes were there, MEIS, SEIS schemes, though they have not been mentioned here, but the fundamentals remain same. If any export incentives are received, then those export incentives will be chargeable to tax under the head profits and gains of business and profession. Then value of any benefit or perquisite arising from the exercise of business and profession. Value of any benefit or perquisite which is arising from the exercise of business and profession, the same is chargeable to tax under this head PGBP. If any sum is due to or received by a partner of a firm from the firm, as we have already discussed in salary head also, if salary which is received by a partner of firm from the firm, it will be chargeable to tax under the head PGBP. It has been provided here कि in case if any sum is due to or received by a partner of a firm from the firm, it will be chargeable to tax under the head PGBP. But in case if same is disallowed in hands of firm, if the remuneration is not allowed in hands of firm under section 40 clause B, in that particular circumstance, it will not be taxable because firm is liable to pay tax. It will not be taxable in the hands of partner. Then if any non-competing fees or payment is received towards exclusivity, then that will be chargeable to tax under the head PGBP. So fundamentally, if you receive any sum which is received for not carrying out any activity in relation to any business or profession, or say not sharing any intangibles, the sum so received will be chargeable to tax under the head PGBP. Then keyman insurance policy, if a company has taken a policy and they have surrendered that policy, the keyman insurance policy receipts will be chargeable to tax under the head profits and gains of business and profession. Now, in case if you convert your stock in trade into a capital asset, so if you convert your stock in trade into a capital asset, fair market value on the date of conversion, basically it will be business income, it will be chargeable to tax under the head PGBP. And in case of section 35 AD, those specified businesses, if you claim any deduction under section 35 AD in respect of any assets, where capital expenditure is allowed as deduction, and in case if these assets are sold, then whatever sale proceeds are there from a specified business, the same will be chargeable to tax under this particular head. So sale proceeds of the assets for which deduction has been claimed under section specified under section 35 AD, that is for specified businesses, you can claim deduction on account of capital expenditure other than land, goodwill and financial instruments. So these are the specifically they have mentioned that these receipts will be chargeable to tax under the head profits and gains of business and profession. Number one is profits and gains of business and profession, which is carried on by the SSE at any time during the previous year. Then compensations, then income derived by trade, professional or similar association from specific services performed for its members, its specific services. Export incentives will be taxable. If any benefit or perquisite is arising from exercise of business and profession, the same will be chargeable to tax under this head. Any sum which is being due to or received by a partner from such firm, then non-competing fees and payment towards the exclusivity, keyman insurance policy receipts, fair market value of the inventory on which has been converted into capital asset, sale proceeds of the assets of specified business, the same are taxable under this particular head. Besides this, we will be seeing that if a person is carrying on business and that is a speculation business, then speculation business will be regarded as distinct from general business. So section 28 is providing for this. Now, how you will be computing the profits and gains of business and profession? Section 29 is providing for what? How you will be computing the profits and gains of business and profession. It's net profit as per profit and loss account. Whatever expenditures which have been debited to P&L account, but the same are not allowable as per the provisions of the Act. It will be added back. Expenses debited to profit and loss account. Expenses which are debited to profit and loss account but not allowable under this head, that is section 37 2B or section 38, section 40, 40A, 43B. So expenses which are not allowable but debited to profit and loss account, you have to increase the profit by that, because you have reduced the profit by debiting the same in profit and loss account. Therefore, they are not allowable, your profit will be increased. Similarly, if any incomes which are taxable under this head, if any incomes which are taxable under this head, but the same has not been credited to profit and loss account, you will be what? Increasing your profit from by that income element. Then allowable expenses which have been allowable expenses under this particular head, but not being debited to profit and loss account, will be reduced. Besides this, if any exempt income or incomes which are not chargeable tax under this head, they are credited to P&L account, then the same will be what? Reduced. Say rental income, house property income, dividend income, the same has been credited here. Interest income on investments, the same has been credited here in the profit and loss account, but it is chargeable to tax under the other head, income from other sources, or say if it is taxable under the head capital gains, in that particular circumstance, that income will be reduced. So this way you will be computing profits and gains of business and profession, that is in accordance with the provisions of section 29 to that is 30 to 43D, you will be computing the PGBP. Now we have to follow section 145 provides for what? You have to follow either mercantile system of accounting, or you are required to follow cash system of accounting. Our mercantile system of accounting, they have notified income computation and disclosure standards. 10 standards have been notified. If you do not follow proper method of accounting, if you do not follow proper method of accounting, or if you do not follow these income computation and disclosure standards, in that particular circumstance, they will reject your books of accounts, and the AO will make the assessment in accordance with best of his judgment. Now we have what? Method of accounting in case of inventory valuation. Section 145A provides for method of accounting in case of inventory valuation. So basically the inventories will be valued in normal circumstances. The inventories will be valued at cost or net realizable value, whichever is say lower. Actual cost or net realizable value, whichever is lower. So whatever actual cost is their purchase price, and whatever expenditure has been incurred to bring the asset to the present location and condition, the same will be included. And here, if any tax, duty, cess or fees has been paid, and if tax, duty, cess or fees has been paid, the same will be added irrespective we are receiving any input tax credit also. So they say that any tax, duty, cess or fees shall form the part of cost, okay, notwithstanding any right arising as a consequence of such payment. Then in case of unlisted or say unquoted securities, they will be valued at actual cost, and in case of other securities, they will be valued at cost or not net realizable value, whichever is so lower. And here category wise comparison will be there, that is equity will be regarded as one category, debentures will be regarded as say other category. So category wise comparison will be required to be made. So this is what method of accounting for inventory valuation. Then certain cases have been nullified, and they say that taxability of certain income that has been provided in section 145B, if any interest is received on compensation, or if interest has been received on enhanced compensation, irrespective of the method of accounting you are following, the same will be taxable in the year of receipt. Irrespective of the method of accounting you are following, the same will be taxable in the year of receipt. Then in case if there is a claim for escalation of a price in contract, if there is a claim for escalation of a price in contract, or there are export incentives, they will be taxable in the year in which there is a reasonable certainty of its realization is achieved. The same will be taxable in the year in which reasonable certainty of its realization is achieved. Then in case if any assistance is received in form of subsidy, grant or reimbursement, if any assistance has been received in form of subsidy, grant or reimbursement, the same will be taxable in the year of receipt. It will be taxable in the year of receipt. And if subsidy, grant or reimbursement is related to the capital asset, then it will be reduced from the cost of acquisition of that asset. So section 145B is providing for taxability of these incomes. Then we are saying there is a speculative transaction. Speculative transaction has been defined in section 43 subsection 5. It states that what are speculative transactions? Where you do not take delivery. The intention is not to take delivery of the goods. So basically, where by different settlement will be there, these transactions are regarded as what? Speculative transactions. So transactions basically in which contract for the purchase or sale of any commodity, including say stocks and shares, basically it is periodically or ultimately settled otherwise than by way of actual delivery or transfer of commodity. So by difference there will be settlement. There is no intention to take delivery of those goods. Therefore, it is known as speculative transactions. But these transactions, it has been clearly mentioned that these transactions will not be regarded as speculative transactions. They are hedging contracts in respect of raw materials or merchandise to guard against the loss which may arise on account of future price fluctuations. We are engaged in hedging contracts of, say, raw materials or merchandise, hedging contracts in respect of stocks and shares, forward contracts, trading in derivatives and trading in commodity derivatives. When necessary conditions are satisfied, they are traded in recognized stock exchange or say, and time-stamped document will be there, pen will be there. So then these conditions are satisfied, then these transactions will not be regarded as speculative transaction. Now, in case of a company assessee, they have said that in case of a company assessee, where the company is part of the business, is basically purchase and sale of shares of the other company, where company's business is part of the businesses, purchase and sale of shares of the other companies. In that particular circumstance, it will be regarded as speculative business. And however, it won't be regarded as a speculative business if the principal business of the company is, say, trading in shares. If the principal business of the company is trading in shares, it won't be regarded as speculative. If the principal business of the company is banking or granting loans and advances, it won't be regarded as speculative. Or a company whose GTI does not consist of business income, basically, a company whose GTI consists mainly of income from house property, capital gains and income from other sources, for that company, it won't be regarded as speculative. Otherwise, a manufacturing company, say, is engaged in, it's a manufacturing company, and it's also doing business of what? Purchase and sale of shares of other company. Then the same will be regarded as what? The speculative business. It will be regarded as speculative business. Now, relating to taxability of speculative businesses, if you are carrying on speculative business will be distinct from general business. Speculative business will be distinct from general business. We cannot set off speculation loss. We cannot set off speculation loss from general business profits. So speculation profits, they are to be computed separately, because speculation loss can be set off only from speculation gains. And the same can be carried forward for 4 assessment years, succeeding the assessment year in which the loss so occurred. So we can carry forward it for 4 years. So fundamentally, if you are carrying on speculation business, remember speculation business is distinct from the other business, and you cannot set off speculation loss from general business profits. Though general business loss can be set off from what? Speculation gains. If there is a speculation loss, it will be carried forward for how many years? 4 years to be set off from speculation gains. So this was about speculative transactions. Now we see what section 29 provides for. Section 29 provides for the profits and gains of business and profession will be computed in accordance with the provisions of section 30 to 43D. Now what section 30 provides? Section 30 provides that if you are using any building, for the purpose of business or profession, then whatever rent, rates, taxes, repairs and insurance of building is there, the same will be what? Allowed as deduction. So if your premises are occupied by the assessee as a tenant, then rent paid in respect of such premises, and in case the tenant has undertaken to bear the cost of repairs, then repairs cost will also be deductible. Beside this, if the premises are occupied otherwise than as a tenant, then whatever expenditure has been incurred, on current repairs of the premises, the same will be deductible. Then these land revenue, local rates, municipal taxes, these which are payable under any law, the deduction will be subject to the provisions of section 43B. The deduction will be subject to the provisions of section 43B. What section 43B states is the payment must be made on or before the due date of furnishing the return of income. Then it will be allowed in the previous year to which it relates. Otherwise, the same will be allowed in the year of payment. And in case if any capital expenditure has been incurred on repairs, the same will not be deductible. If I have occupied the premises on lease, that is the lessee has occupied the premises on lease, and then he do any capital expenditure, then to the extent of the capital expenditure so incurred, he will be regarded as deemed owner, and he will be entitled depreciation on the same. He will be regarded as deemed owner, and he will be entitled depreciation on the same. So that is section 30. Section 30 is providing for rent, rates, taxes, repairs and insurance of building which is used for the purpose of business and profession. Then section 31 is relating to plant and machinery and furniture. Whatever expenditure has been incurred on repairs and insurance of plant and machinery and furniture, which is of say current repairs, not capital in nature, the same will be allowed as deduction. Then section 38 provides that if any building, plant and machinery, furniture and fixtures, they are partly used for the purpose of business and partly for other purpose, then the deduction under section 30 or deduction under section 31 or depreciation under 32 shall be made proportionate. The same shall be made proportionate in accordance with the portion that is used for the purpose of business and profession of the assessee. Now, section 32 is dealing with depreciation. So, depreciation we'll be discussing. It's a very important topic. Section 32, it is dealing with depreciation, and under the income tax, depreciation basically is allowed on the assets or the block of asset. And block of asset has been defined in section 2, clause 11. What block of asset means? Block of asset means a group of asset falling within class of asset. Group of asset falling within class of asset. That class of asset can be tangible assets or intangible assets in respect of which same rate of depreciation is prescribed. So block of asset means a group of asset falling within class of asset being tangible assets, being what? Building, machinery, plant or furniture, or being know-how, patent, copyright, trademark, licenses, franchises, or any other business or commercial rights of similar nature. Now, intangible assets, the block rate is 25%. On intangible assets, the block rate is what? 25%. So here, block of asset means group of asset falling within class of asset comprising of tangible assets or intangible assets in respect of which the same rate of depreciation has been prescribed. Now, what are the basic conditions for claiming depreciation? Section 32 provides for the conditions for claiming depreciation. Fundamentally, depreciation, as I already told you, the same is available on asset or block of asset, and that asset must be owned wholly or partly by the assessee. Even on fractional ownership also, depreciation is allowed. Registered ownership is not required. Registered ownership is not required. So here, even on fractional ownership also, depreciation is allowed. Registered ownership is not required. Then the asset must be used for the purpose of business or profession. The asset must be used for the purpose of business or profession. The user requirement is there that you have to use the asset for business and profession. The same can be active use also, or standby machines are there. Standby machines are there, that is passive use. Even in respect of passive use also, depreciation is what? Admissible. Then in case if any asset is acquired during the previous year, if any asset is acquired during the previous year and the same is put to use for less than 180 days, then depreciation on such asset will be calculated at half of the block rate. So it is in the year of acquisition, if the asset is acquired during the previous year and put to use for less than 180 days, then in that particular circumstance, depreciation will be calculated at what? Half of the block rate. And claim for depreciation is mandatory. Claim for depreciation is mandatory. Whether the assessee claims or he do not claim, he will be entitled depreciation. That is been provided in explanation to section 32. So fundamentally, these are the conditions. Say, if a new asset has been acquired and is put to use for less than 180 days, this is the WDV of the block. New asset of 5 lakh has been acquired, which has been put to use for less than 180 days. And block rate is, say, 10%. On this 10 lakh rupees, 10% depreciation will be admissible, and on that new asset, 5% depreciation will be what? Admissible. That is to be remembered here. Now, as we have told you that here we have to make the depreciation is admissible on the WDV of the block of the asset. How you will be calculating? 43.6 basically deals with the provisions relating to computation of WDV. So first of all, you will be making the block, and then you will be finding out what are those assets on which same rate of depreciation has been prescribed. So here, aggregate of the WDV of all the assets falling within the block at the beginning of the previous year is taken. Okay. Then whatever actual cost of asset which has been acquired during the year falling within the block, the same will be added. Say we are having a block of plant and machinery. We are having P1, P2, P3 plant at the beginning of the year whose WDV depreciated value is, say, 25 lakhs. Now a new plant P4 is acquired and that is for rupees 10 lakhs. That will be added. P1 plant says it is sold for rupees, say, 4 lakhs. So here depreciation will be admissible. That is on 31 lakh rupees will be the WDV on which we will be entitled to claim the depreciation. So fundamentally what they are saying is it is the WDV of the assets falling within the block at the beginning of the year. Whatever is the add, we have to add the actual cost of the asset which has been acquired during the year which is falling within the block. What you have to reduce is the money is payable in respect of any asset which has been sold, discarded, demolished or destroyed. The same is to be reduced. This is the WDV on which depreciation will be calculated at a block rate, and which depreciation will be calculated at block rate, and we get the depreciated value of the block at the end of the year. Then in case if any asset falling within the block has been transferred in by way of slump sale, then how you will be arriving the WDV. So basically what slump sale is, it's a slump sale is a sale of undertaking or a division for a lump sum consideration without assigning values to individual assets and liabilities. Slump sales means what? Transfer of undertaking or a division for a lump sum consideration without assigning the values to the individual assets and liabilities. That is basically slump sale. Now how you will be arriving with a WDV in case of slump sale? We take the WDV of the block of the asset. We take the WDV of the block of the asset. From there we get what? Deduction on account of slump sale to the extent which we compute. How you are computing that? Say if you are having, say, a chemical plant which is consisting of plant, which is consisting of, say, chemical division is there, and that has been transferred, land, building, plant and all assets and liabilities, the same has been transferred for a lump sum consideration. Now you will be, say, you have to arrive with the amount to be reduced from the WDV of the plant and machinery block, because plant has also been transferred. So you will calculate that WDV as if the chemical plant was the only asset in the block, and then whatever WDV has been arrived, say from the actual cost by reducing the depreciation. Whatever WDV has been arrived, that WDV will be reduced from what? The WDV of the block. But the reduction cannot exceed what? The WDV of the entire block. So how you are arriving? We are seeing whatever what is the actual cost of the assets falling within the block which has been transferred by way of slump sale. Actual cost of the asset falling within the block which has been transferred by way of slump sale. From that, we will be reducing the depreciation that would have been allowed as if the asset was the only asset in the relevant block. Then we get this is a deduction on account of slump sale, but this cannot exceed what? The WDV of the block. This reduction cannot exceed the WDV of the block. So here, in this manner, you are calculating the WDV. Now, in this case, we already discussed that if the asset has been acquired and put to use for less than what? 180 days, then depreciation on such asset, will be calculated at what? Half of the block rate. Then we are having in the various explanations have been provided under section 43(6), which are dealing with the WDV in special cases. These are dealing with the provisions relating to computation of the WDV in special cases. So in case there is a succession of business or profession, otherwise than by way of death. So here, what will be the WDV? Succession of business and profession, otherwise than by way of death. The WDV in the hands of the predecessor will become what? WDV in the hands of the successor, where the predecessor cannot be found, that has been provided. So WDV basically in the hands of the predecessor becomes a WDV in the hands of the successor. In case if a holding company transfers the block to 100% subsidiary company or vice versa, and the transferee company is Indian company. Transferee company is what? Indian company. Then in that particular circumstance, the WDV in the hands of the transferor company will become what? WDV in the hands of the transferee company. So basically, if there is a transfer of block of asset by a holding company to its 100% subsidiary company or vice versa, in that particular circumstance, the WDV of the transferor company will become the WDV of the transferee company. It must be a 100% subsidiary and transferee company must be an Indian company. Similarly, in a scheme of amalgamation, if block of asset has been transferred by the amalgamating company to the amalgamated company, and amalgamated company is an Indian company, in that particular circumstance, the WDV of the amalgamating company will become what? The WDV of the amalgamated company. And in case of demerger also, if in case of demerger, the block of asset has been transferred by demerged company to resulting company, then in that particular circumstance, the WDV of the demerged company will become what? The WDV of the assets which have been transferred to resulting company. And the WDV of the assets which have been transferred to resulting company basically will be reduced from the WDV of the demerged company to calculate the WDV of demerged company after demerger. So WDV of the demerged company after demerger will be what? The WDV of demerged company before demerger minus the WDV of the assets which have been transferred to the resulting company. There was earlier a corporatization scheme of recognized stock exchange. In case if under corporatization scheme of recognized stock exchange, the block of asset has been transferred. In that particular circumstance, the WDV in the hands of the company, immediately before such corporatization, basically it is a society. So WDV in the hands of society will become what? The WDV in hands of the company after such corporatization has taken place. Earlier stock exchanges, they were governed by society, then they were converted into company, then whatever were the WDV of the assets of the society immediately before corporatization becomes a WDV in the hands of the company. Similarly, if if a private limited company or unlisted company has been converted into limited liability partnership, private limited company or unlisted company has been converted into limited liability partnership, by virtue of which the block of asset has been transferred from that private limited company or unlisted company to LLP. In this particular circumstance, what will be the WDV? The WDV of the private limited company or unlisted company will become what? The WDV of the LLP immediately before such conversion. Then in case assessees was in earlier years was covered under exemption. So he's stating that he has not claimed any depreciation as per the income tax law. He is stating what? He has not claimed any depreciation as per the income tax law. He is stating this. So in this particular circumstance, they say that whatever is the depreciation which has been claimed in the books of accounts, that will be reduced to arrive at what? The WDV. And in case if there is any, say, revaluation, then the revaluation along with its depreciation impact will be ignored. Say his actual cost of the asset was rupees, say 10 lakh rupees, and he has claimed 1 lakh rupees as depreciation in the books of accounts. So here, earlier he was covered under exemption. So here 9 lakh rupees will be taken as the WDV for further, say, calculating depreciation on the same. But in case if he has revalued it, he is saying that I have the value, he is revalued by 5 lakh rupees, 15 lakh rupees, and he has claimed a depreciation of 150 and stating that this is value as per the books of accounts is 1350. So you have to what? Nullify the impact of this revaluation. Whatever 5 lakh is been upward valuation, that will be reduced, and whatever the extra depreciation which has been counted on account of revaluation, that will be what? Added back to arrive at what? The WDV on which the depreciation will be admissible subsequently when the exemption has been removed. In case of, say, composite business, that is assessees carrying on composite business, say tea business, growing and manufacturing tea, coffee or rubber, as you are aware, 60-40 or 75-25 or 65-35. Here agriculture income and business income is there. So here the WDV will be calculated as if the entire deduction on depreciation has been allowed, as if the entire income, is a business income. It is not a composite, it is a business income. So WDV arrive after deducting depreciation as if the entire income has been derived from business. So these are the ways to calculate WDV in special cases. Now it may so happen that, say, we are having a block of asset. We are having block of asset consisting of plant. We are having P1, P2, P3 plant. The WDV is, say, opening WDV is 10 lakh rupees. We have acquired P4 plant for 4 lakh rupees. This is 14 lakh rupees, and subsequently P1, P2, P3 and P4 plant are sold. P1, P2, P3 and P4 plant are sold for rupees, say, 8 lakhs. All these plants are sold for rupees 8 lakhs. Now here, block does not exist. It is a 6 lakhs. This will be regarded as what? Short-term capital loss, because block does not exist. No depreciation will be admissible. No depreciation will be admissible. It may be a case what we are having P1, P2, P3 plant. We are having P1, P2, P3 plant for 10 lakh rupees. We have acquired P4 plant for 4 lakh rupees. Now 14 lakh rupees. But P1 plant is an antique plant that has been sold for 16 lakh rupees. Now here, this will be regarded, 2 lakh rupees will be regarded as what here? In this case, it is a short-term capital gain. Because block exists. Here block exists. How block is existing? We are having P2 plant, we are having P3 plant, we are having P4 plant. Block exists, but there is no WDV. So in case the WDV of the block of the asset cease to exist, that becomes 0. But block still exists, then no depreciation will be admissible, and whatever are the proceeds over and above the WDV, that will be regarded as short-term capital gains. Where WDV exists, but block cease to exist, then no depreciation will be admissible, because asset must be there for claiming depreciation. So no depreciation will be admissible in such a case. In that particular circumstance, the resultant sum can be a short-term capital gain if proceeds are more, or it can be a short-term capital loss. Then we are saying that we are adding in the block of asset. What you are adding? Actual cost. We are adding actual cost of the asset falling within the block. Falling within the block. Now what actual cost is? That same has been defined in section 43 clause 1 along with the various explanations. Now what actual cost is? Actual cost is basically the actual cost. That is what the purchase price and whatever expenditure has been incurred to bring the asset to the present location condition. Basically the actual cost, as reduced by that portion of cost which has been met directly or indirectly by any other person or authority. So basically it is the purchase price of the asset. But they have said that if we have made any payment or aggregate of payments are made to a person in a day, payment or aggregate of payments are made to a person in a day, the same has been made otherwise than by way of account pay check, account pay bank draft, or use of electronic clearing system or other prescribed electronic mode, which exceeds rupees 10,000, then in that particular circumstance, the same will not form the part of the actual cost. So invoice amount is say 5 lakh rupees. We have made 4 lakhs payment through NEFT and 1 lakh is say cash, or it is say crossed check. Not it's a bearer check. It's not an account pay check. So in this case, the actual cost will not be considered as what? 5 lakhs. Actual cost will be what? 4 lakhs. So it's an important point you must remember. If you make payment to a person in a day in aggregate through non-banking routes, then in that particular circumstance, that won't be forming the part of the actual cost. Then in expenditures, if you incur, the same are disallowed as we have already seen. It won't be forming the part of the actual cost. So what actual cost? Basically, it's a purchase price. Whatever other expenditure which has been incurred to bring the asset to the present location and condition, the same will form the part of the actual cost. Then we see that these explanations which we'll be discussing here, as one by one we'll be discussing these explanations. So these are certain explanations which have been provided in case if any asset which was say earlier used for scientific research, if any asset which was earlier used for scientific research, now the same has been used for the purpose of business and profession. Now the same has been used for the purpose of business and profession. So in case if any asset is used for scientific research, 100% deduction is admissible. 100% deduction is admissible in case if any asset is used for scientific research. Now after the asset ceases to be used for scientific research, it is used for the purpose of business, its actual cost will be nil. What you will take? Its actual cost will be nil, because the purchase price from that whatever expenditure has been claimed, the same is deductible, so its actual cost will be nil. Then in case if any inventory is being converted into capital asset, inventory is being converted into capital asset and the same is used for the purpose of business and profession. So here fair market value of the inventory, here the fair market value of the inventory on the date of conversion, the same will become the actual cost. If any asset is acquired by way of gift or inheritance, so here whatever is the actual cost of the previous owner as reduced by the depreciation that would have been allowed to him, as if the asset was the only asset in the block, that WDV so arrived will become our actual cost. If asset has been acquired by way of gift or say by way of inheritance. In case if any second-hand asset has been acquired at enhanced cost to claim excessive depreciation. To claim what? Excessive depreciation. So this explanation provides that here the actual cost will be determined by the assessing officer with the prior approval of the joint commissioner. In this particular case, the actual cost will be determined by the AO with the prior approval of the joint commissioner. Then there is a case of reacquisition of the asset. We have sold the asset and then we have what? Reacquired it. So WDV at the time of transfer, when we have sold the said asset, or reacquisition price, whichever is less, will become the actual cost. In case of reacquisition of the asset, WDV at the time of transfer or reacquisition price, whichever less, that will be the actual cost. Then, in case if any asset has been, say, it is a sale and leaseback transactions. Sale and leaseback transactions. In case of sale and leaseback transactions, so if assets are sold and then again taken on lease. So the WDV, lessor is entitled for depreciation. So WDV of the lessee will become what? The actual cost to the lessor. WDV of the lessee at the time of sale will become the actual cost to the lessor. If the building, it was previously used for other purposes. Now it is used for the purpose of, say, business and profession. We are residing in the building. Now we are carrying on business and profession. So here the WDV of the building will be computed. The WDV of the building will be computed as if the building has been used for the purpose of business and profession since its initial acquisition. The WDV of the building will be computed as if the building has been used for the purpose of business and profession since its initial acquisition, and rate of depreciation on the date of conversion will be applied. Rate of depreciation on the date of conversion will be applied. Similarly, if any capital asset has been acquired by a holding company or, say, a subsidiary company, so here whatever is the cost to the transfer company will become cost to the transferee company. This is holding and subsidiary. Similar is the case of amalgamation, and similar is the case of demerger. In case of amalgamation, the amalgamating company's cost will become the cost to the amalgamated company. In case of demerger, the demerged company's cost will become the, say, cost to the resulting company, because on these transactions no capital gains is charged to tax. Therefore, they are saying that is a predecessor's cost will become cost here. Then, in case if any non-resident is there, he has brought any asset which was used by him for the purpose of business and profession outside India. Now the same has been brought by him to be used in India for business and profession. So here the WDV arrived. Had the asset been used in India since its initial acquisition, will become the actual cost. So actual cost will be what? The WDV of that asset, had the asset been used in India since its initial acquisition for the purpose of business and profession. Corporatization scheme of SEBI, it has been provided that in case if any asset has been acquired in corporatization scheme of SEBI, the cost to the stock exchange prior to corporatization will become the actual cost. In case of a capital asset for which we have claimed a deduction under section 35AD, its actual cost will be nil, because 100% deduction is allowed. But in case if you have misutilized, the provisions of 35AD, then taxability arises there. Therefore, in that case, WDV of that asset will be arrived in normal manner if you are claiming depreciation, and whatever the WDV, that will become, say, actual cost. Besides this, if you have borrowed any capital, for acquisition of the asset, then interest on borrowed capital before the asset is put to use, will be added to the cost. If you take ITC, input tax credit of GST element, then but natural, your actual cost will be reduced by the amount of the ITC so claimed. Similarly, if any portion of the cost has been met directly or indirectly, by the central government, state government, or any other authority or any other person, then the actual cost will be reduced by the amount so met, that is a subsidy, grant, or reimbursement so received. And in case if it is not relatable to a particular asset, but it is investment as a whole, then proportionately we will be reducing. Say we are receiving a subsidy of 2,50,000 rupees for investment of 2 crore 50 lakhs, we are receiving the subsidy of 2,50,000 rupees, and investment in plant and machinery is, say, 10 lakhs. So proportionate amount will be what? Reduced here. If any asset has been acquired outside India, what 43A provides is, if any asset has been acquired outside India and for which we are taking any foreign currency loan, or deferred credit has been taken, in case there is any increase or decrease in the exchange rate fluctuation, when we have taken the loan and when we are making the payment. Say we have taken a loan of 1 lakh US dollars at a rate of rupees 70, and when we are repaying 20,000 US dollars, the exchange rate is 75. So there is a loss to the extent of 5 rupees per dollar. $20,000 have been paid at the time of actual payment. So our loss is 1 lakh rupees. So increase or decrease on account of exchange rate fluctuation, the same will be adjusted in the actual cost or WDV as the case may be. So here 1 lakh rupees will be what? Our liability has increased, so the same will be added. If our liability is decreased, the same will be what? Reduced. So this will give you what? The actual cost for the purpose of claiming depreciation. This will be added in the block of the asset. Then explanation has been provided that in case there is a amalgamation or demerger or business reorganization, say firm has been converted into company fulfilling the conditions which have been laid down in 4713, or sole proprietary concern has been converted into company fulfilling the conditions which have been laid down in section 4714, or say a unlisted company or a limited liability partnership has been unlisted company, or say a private limited company has been converted into a limited liability partnership fulfilling the conditions of 4713B, or there is amalgamation, or there is a demerger, or there is a succession, then in that particular circumstance the depreciation will be calculated as if such amalgamation, demerger or business reorganization has not taken place, and the depreciation so calculated will be apportioned, between the predecessor and the successor. The same will be apportioned between the predecessor and the successor in the ratio of what? Number of days for which the assets were used by them. So depreciation will be calculated as if the amalgamation, demerger, business reorganization has not taken place, and the depreciation so calculated will be apportioned between the amalgamating company and the amalgamated company, demerged company and the resulting company, or the predecessor and the successor in the ratio of number of days for which the assets have been used by them. Then under section 32(1)(2)(a), there is a case of additional depreciation. Under section 32(1)(2)(a), there is a case of additional depreciation. Here additional depreciation is available on new plant and machinery. Additional depreciation is available on new plant and machinery. On second-hand plant, additional depreciation won't be available. On any new plant and machinery which has been acquired and installed after 31st of March 2005, assessee is entitled to claim additional depreciation in case the assessee is engaged in the business of production or manufacture of any article or thing. Assessee is basically engaged in the business of what? Production or manufacture of any article or thing, or is engaged in what? Generation, transmission and distribution of power. If he is engaged in the business of generation, distribution, transmission and distribution of power, he will be entitled for the additional depreciation. Now what is additional depreciation? Additional depreciation will be calculated at rate of 20% of the actual cost. Additional depreciation, the same is calculated at rate of 20% of the actual cost, and 10% of the actual cost if the asset has been acquired during the year and put to use for less than say 180 days, and balance 10% in the subsequent year. In case if they were there in the backward areas of Bihar, West Bengal, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, okay, in these cases they are what? Entitled for, earlier they were entitled for additional depreciation at rate of 35% if they have commenced their operations up to 31/3/2020. Now this is only relevant for, say, if they have claimed in the financial year 1920, 17.5% additional depreciation if the asset has been acquired and put to use for less than 180 days, then in that particular circumstance, 180 days, then in that particular circumstance, in 2021, they will be entitled for additional depreciation at rate of 17.5%. Otherwise, you must remember this, that those assessees now also, if they are carrying on business in those backward areas also, they will be entitled for additional depreciation of 20% only, and 10% if the asset has been acquired and put to use for less than 180 days. So this is only a phase for those assessees which have been there in the backward areas. They have already installed but put to use for less than 180 days in the year of installation, their additional depreciation was 17.5%, and in the next year they will be entitled for 17.5%. However, no additional depreciation will be available in respect of any second-hand plant, office appliances or road transport vehicles, plant and machinery which has been installed in office premises, residential accommodation including guest house, machinery whose actual cost is allowed as deduction by way of depreciation or otherwise in one financial year. So the concept of additional depreciation you must remember. And in case if the amount of depreciation allowance under 32(1)(1), if the 32(1), if the amount of depreciation allowance is greater than the profits and gains, the remaining amount is say unabsorbed depreciation, and unabsorbed depreciation can be carried forward for indefinite period. Unabsorbed depreciation can be carried forward for indefinite period and can be set off from any head of income except salaries. It can be set off from any head of income except salary. Here return of loss is not required to be submitted to carry forward unabsorbed depreciation. First of all, current year depreciation will be there, then brought forward loss will be there, and then there will be set off of unabsorbed depreciation. So this is all about the depreciation in normal cases. Now in case of power generating undertakings, 32(1)(1) is there. Depreciation in case of undertakings which are engaged in generation of power, generation and distribution of power, they have been given an option. They have been given an option to claim depreciation on individual asset, on SLM rates on individual assets. And once they have exercised the option, once the option has been exercised, the same cannot be withdrawn during the remaining part of the financial year. When these assets are sold, this is depreciation, is claimed under section 32(1)(1). If the assets are sold, say we are having a power generating undertaking, 25 lakh is the actual cost of the asset. Actual cost of asset is 25 lakhs. Under 32(1)(1), we have claimed a depreciation of say 15 lakh rupees. This is the WDV remaining, that is 10 lakh rupees. And asset is sold for 8 lakh rupees. Asset is sold for 8 lakh rupees. This 2 lakh rupees will be regarded as what? Terminal depreciation. It will be terminal depreciation, and same will be allowed under section 32(1)(3). In case if the asset is sold for say 12 lakh rupees, if the asset is sold for 12 lakh rupees, then 2 lakh rupees will be what? The balancing charge. 2 lakh rupees will be the balancing charge taxable under section 41(2). And in case if the asset is sold for say 30 lakh rupees, so here the overall profit is what? The WDV is 10 lakhs, WDV is 10 lakhs, asset is sold for 30 lakhs, overall profit is 20 lakh rupees, which will be bifurcated into two parts. Over and above the original cost, what will the original cost? 25 lakhs. Over and above the original cost, 5 lakh rupees. The same will be chargeable to tax as capital gains, and to the extent of deduction allowed by way of depreciation, 15 lakh rupees, it will be regarded as what? Balancing charge. It will be regarded as balancing charge. So balancing charge basically cannot exceed the amount of the depreciation. So fundamentally, what will be the tax treatment on sale of asset? The same has been provided in section 50A. If monies payable is less than WDV, this is the case, monies payable is less than WDV, then it will be regarded as terminal depreciation. If monies payable exceeds the WDV, then monies payable minus the WDV, monies payable minus the WDV is balancing charge. Where monies payable exceeds the actual cost, where the monies payable exceeds the actual cost, then balancing charge will be to the extent of the deduction which has been allowed by way of depreciation, that is actual cost minus WDV. This is what? Depreciation basically. This will be the balancing charge, and short-term capital gains or long-term capital gains can be there, but no indexation will be made. It is monies payable minus the actual cost. In our case, if we see, we have sold the asset for 30 lakh rupees. Our actual cost was what? 25 lakh rupees. So our short-term capital gains was what? 5 lakhs here, or short-term or long-term depending upon the period of holding. Actual cost was our 25 lakh rupees, and WDV was 10 lakh rupees. So here 15 lakh was what? Our balancing charge. So this is basically the tax treatment in case the asset is sold and sale proceeds exceeds the WDV. Then so much of the excess, to the extent it does not allow exceed the depreciation so allowed, will be chargeable to tax as business profits. Over and above the original cost, the same will be chargeable to tax as what? Capital gains over and above the original cost. If sale proceeds are less than WDV, in that particular circumstance, if sale proceeds are less than WDV, in that particular circumstance, what will happen? What will happen? In that particular circumstance, sale proceeds are less than the WDV, terminal depreciation will be allowed. So this was all about calculation of depreciation. You must remember the rates also. You must remember the rates of depreciation, so that in case if the rates have not been mentioned, you can able to solve the same. So this is a very, very important topic which we have discussed about. Next, we'll be going for the other special provisions relating to what? Computation of PGBP.